Eric Goldman here, managing editor at Fandom. I am joined by Kylara. She's representing our fan wikis. She got a couple fan questions, some of her own. We're here with the creators and the cast of Prey. This is going up after the embargo lifts, so I can say how much I love this movie as I'm talking to you guys. Dan, let me jump in though with you. You know, I remember the old Predator comics, and they would kind of like jump around in time and different eras. I was so psyched when I heard this was happening, and I know you kind of came to them with this idea. What was sort of your inspiration for this?
Well, by the way, I mean, there is a little bit of like the wish fulfillment of the kind of thing that you only see in comic book form actually doing it for real. That's a big part of oh my bad. Was any of that did I? But yeah, so that is an element for me for sure. I also just have always been so hell-bent on making a period science fiction film and a movie whose story is told primarily through action. But did not want it to just be a fun, visceral experience. Really wanted it to be an emotional one as well. So I thought about, well, if we took the engine of a sports film and injected that into this action movie, it could actually have a lot of heart. And in thinking about that underdog story, I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if the story of the making of the movie could mirror the story that the character is going through inside the movie? And thought Native Americans are so often, and Comanche in particular, are so often relegated to playing the sidekicks or the villains and never really the hero. So it's sort of a combination of all of those things that led to this pitch.
Amber, so you've done TV like Legion and Roswell. What's it like going from that to a very physically intense action role like in Prey?
That is a good question. I mean, you know, obviously the difference of shooting film to TV is that there's episodes and that things are broken down into, you know, a finite amount of time per kind of, you have a large story that gets told in increments, whereas obviously our whole story was what it was from the get, which is kind of nice. But also there were a lot of, I feel like, things that developed and changed. And I mean, the movie that you see now is very different than the movie that it was when I first read the script or even while we were making it. It's very different. So there's that element. But I mean also, yeah, the physical element is different than like I've been fortunate to encounter stunts before when I've worked, but this is so different than anything like that because I mean it was just also, it wasn't anything as clean as like martial arts or weapons or anything, you know, that I've done before. It was very visceral and out in the woods and everything. I think Dan wanted to be very, you know, real and kind of raw in that experience. And also just the stuff that we did. There was kind of no avoiding the realness of everything.
Dane, you know, this is interesting. You're playing an iconic. You're playing this iconic role, the Predator, but the Predator's a little different than some of the typical returning villains because it's not the same guy every time, you know. So how much do you think about? Okay, this is what the Predator's been established as, but also what's this Predator like?
So essentially, if the other Predators from the past films are from New York City, this guy's from the outback in Australia. Dan, we touch upon the key words that he, you know, kind of gave to us from the beginning: feral, primal, animalistic, kind of trying to get away from the past Predators a little bit, that 1980s wrestler style movement, and go a little less human, a little more dynamic, lean but strong. And it was a culmination of all little elements and bits and pieces of things that he wanted, but still staying true to the tradition of the Predator way of life, essentially.
Dakota, you know, this is your first professional credit, which is amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So what was it like, you know, for you to sort of be dropped into the middle of this entire thing?
Oh man, it was it's back to the outback in Australia. I compare myself a lot of times to Crocodile Dundee on his first trip to the city. You know, lots of new experiences.
Sure, yeah.
Lots of new experiences. But you know, acting is something I've always wanted to do. But I honestly wasn't sure it was in the cards for me, just because I didn't know anybody in the business. But you know, often in times I would find myself studying people experiencing emotions, you know, different emotions, and so getting to actually do that for real, you know, was kind of a dream come true for me, especially with such good people. I mean, it was just amazing.
for Amber, Dakota, and Jane, what does it mean to have this kind of representation in an action film like Predator, the Predator franchise?
I'll take that question. No, it means a lot because it really sets that bar high for representation, because not only do we have a predominantly Native cast, but we also had Native people behind the camera, because most of the time when Native people are hired, they're in front of the camera, you know, as actors or even background. So just to have like it was just all encompassed Native, and that's one thing you get when you have a Native producer. And I just like even the people that were the voice actors, you know, that did the Walla in the background. We had Comanche people there, you know. We had Comanche linguists come, and actually this is the first time that the film is going to have a complete Comanche dub. But that's a first for my nation, Comanches, and this is the first time that a brand new film comes out all in a native language.
It's amazing.
It's such an ambitious movie, you know, just from the pitch alone. So yeah, Jane and Dan, it's like, you know, you're juggling all these elements. You know, it's a period piece and it's a sci-fi and action, which is what the appeal is. But were there days where you're like, whoa, we're juggling a lot here?
I mean, it certainly is one of the exciting things about making this. I grew up on John Carpenter movies and loved genre bending, and Predator, even before I seen a John Carpenter movie, was like the first time I had seen a mashup of genres. So it's the thing that I love in the final product and enjoy watching in films. It's definitely the thing that was incredibly challenging in the making, because you do have to sort of wear a bunch of different hats in terms of the craft behind building a suspense sequence is very different from the craft behind building a scene between Nadu and her mother, or a fight between a predator and a human. So there is a lot, and not to mention all the animal work in the film, sometimes with the actual animals being there, sometimes not. So it was incredibly challenging for sure.
Was that for you guys as the actors, you know, just kind of interesting to come to set and one day you might have a really intense scene about this sort of sibling dynamic, and then the next you're trying to get through the mud and fight a predator?
Yeah, I mean, every day was very intense, regardless of what kind of intensity it was. I mean, there was definitely like almost a sense of ease, I think, of showing up and having days where we got to have like really narrative heavy days or scenes, I think, that I was really excited about, because like so much of it, you know, is obviously action and it's outside and all this stuff. But I think what to me really grounded this story was I mean, of course, like my perspective of Nadu's story, but just in general, the humanness. I think those are, to me, I didn't know that this was a Predator film when I first auditioned for it. So it only lived as this story about, you know, these Comanche people. So having those scenes to me definitely felt very like grounding and kind of like, okay, we're here and then we do some crazy stuff and then we're here and then we do some crazy stuff and then we're here. Yeah.
That's awesome. What about for you, Sam?
Yeah, I was so excited about, you know, being able to portray such emotional diversity like within the character, because like you said, you know, one day you're fighting, one day you're yourself in your best moment. You know, everything is good, everything is looking good for your character, and then the next you're fighting with a sibling. You know, it's just so many things going on and so many opportunities to flex different muscles within yourself, and it was I don't know, just like I said again, dream come true.
We were having a big conversation before you guys came in about Predator weapons, and actually I know we have a fan question about Predator
do.
weapons.
Yeah, we have a question about what kind of weapons will we be seeing, new or existing weapons? Because we are taking, this is a period piece, so it's happening a few hundred years in the past. So what was it like taking the Predator weapons back a few hundred years?
The answer is both. You will see new and existing weapons. Even the existing ones, this is sort of like the prior iteration of those. It was a lot of fun to come up with this arsenal. Challenging because the design of the Predator, because we wanted to really strip it down and feel so much more creature-like, it made sense for us to not really go into a more armored look that we used to see. So all the weight of the take we were using for the Predator was all placed on its weaponry. But it did allow us to have a blast designing a cut clamp and a net ball and a crossbolt and all of these things that can be a delight even for diehard franchise fans to see their Predator wield.
What was it like for you as the one doing the wielding? You got that costume, you got the mask, you got a lot of elements here. So
Yeah, I mean, one particular weapon that stood out most to me, based on the fact that it was in my hands most out of all the weapons, was the combi stick. And obviously that plays a tremendous role in the film. And one scene in particular that sticks out to me is my fight with this guy here. And one thing you may not know is I'm blind through the whole shooting process. I'm looking through 2 holes in the neck at the ground. For the predator to look forward, I have to look at the ground and kind of shrug my shoulders in a way that hides that. And it was a situation with him where it's like, hey, dude, during this fight sequence, if you don't duck, you're going to get hit because I can't see you. Wow. And we went through a lot of rehearsal, a lot of choreography. That is one of my favorite fights in the movie. It's so dynamic and stuff. But the combi stick, it breaks in half, and it was fun. It was great.
It was amazing, and it made it real for me. I got to dodge this thing, or else I won't die.
And I just remember,
It's method.
During rehearsals, he stopped, he looked at me, and goes, "Oh man, I just want this to look as epic as possible." And I think, yeah, he's a big badass in the film.
Oh, thank you too, buddy.
Of course.
I'm following this up with a fan question from the back of the room, our producer Max, who he just wanted to know if you have a predator coming at you, what weapon are you running for, or what would you try to do at this point to fight a predator?
I believe your greatest weapon is your mind. I mean, truly though, you look at it, at all of the films throughout, the franchise, and the thing that kind of carries, the thing that to me makes the Predator different, and the through line of what makes the series interesting, is the fact that this monster creature alien thing is not so, it's so much more intellectual, and it has such, I think, a far more complex motivation of, trying to seek out an opponent. It's not just a world domination or senseless violence. It's kind of something very specific. So your brain.
There is a correct answer to this question, and the answer is none. Because if you're unarmed, he will not attack you.
There you go.
Using my mind. It was a combo of the two.
I had a flight response. You had a flight response. All right.
That says a lot about our characters. Yeah.
Anyone else have any other suggestions?
Oh man. Okay, so if it was a straight up square up, I love the spear, man. Although something real deadly sharp. I mean, the spear it goes without appreciation, I think. Yeah.
Jane, what about you?
Oh gosh. I would just look at it because I would be like, yes. But,
That's what I've been waiting for.
exactly.
So cool.
Yeah. Because in our Comanche mythology, we've always had a predator. Our name for that is Pia Mupitz, which is big monster. And this big monster is, when we refer to it, we tell children, don't cry at night, or you better behave or we're going to call Pia Mupitz to come, Pia Mupitz going to come to our house if you're not, behaving or whatever. So growing up, I've always heard about this. And then when, I got the call to meet Dan and to produce on this, I'm like, yes, I want to do that. So I would probably just stand there in awe for a minute and go, yeah, I finally met Pia Mupitz, because I was one of those kids that had to always be, you better stop, or we're gonna do this. And I'm like, look, I am working with Pia Mupitz. See, I was preparing my whole life.
Oh,
Dana?
Well, a couple weapons did come to mind, but then I thought, bad idea. No. Yeah, I mean, Dan's right. It's they are trophy hunters, and if you're unarmed, they won't go after you. So you have to know that and use your mind, and that comes into play. So if a predator's running at me, I'm taking my spear and just going like this and standing there.
Don't. Yeah. I'm not.
Or let them know that I'm pregnant. So that I'm pregnant.
All right. Not a threat, man.
Silver bullet.
Yeah, exactly.
Lastly, Dan, I know you've talked about you'd love to kind of do more in this world, and I don't know if you can say, are those thoughts about in this era or jumping around in different eras?
Oh, wow, I cannot answer that question. So sorry to disappoint. Yeah.
Anything's a possibility.
Anything's a possibility.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Again, movie's great. Prey, you can watch it on Hulu on August 5th. Keep it here at Fandom. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome.